Welcome. You're listening to the IT/OT Insider podcast. I'm your host, Willem, and in this special series on industrial data ops, I'm joined by my co author, David, and by Joel Jacob from Splunk, which is now part of Cisco. If you want to hear more about what's happening in the world of industrial data and AI, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and our blog. Welcome, Joel,
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be here today.
and welcome, David.
Thank you, Willem. Also happy to be here and happy to be hosting Joel today. He's the principal product manager at Splunk, working on their OT capabilities. We're going to talk about that today. Honestly, I first encountered Splunk as a cybersecurity product back in my days when I was still working on industrial cybersecurity. And I must say, I'm looking forward, to this conversation because I really want to learn. I would say what steps Splunk has taken and why they are stepping also into the OT world on the data side. So let's kick this conversation off, Joel, with a short introduction of yourself and Splunk.
Yeah, I think actually me joining Splunk probably reflects more and more investment of Splunk into the OT side. So my background is actually I went to school for robotics, but when I graduated, there wasn't really robotics as a big industry as it is, starting to become now. So I worked at Lexus doing quality control, manufacturing engineering, launched the RX 350 SUV, and that was really cool. And then I felt, automotive, it wasn't moving as fast for me. I was always into like technology. So I went to a smart technology company called Ecobee. They do smart thermostats, smart sensors, all these things. And that's where I really learned about IoT. And I switched also from engineering to product management to say, well, how do you compete with, Google? They have Nest and all of these other players. So, okay, we'll partner with Amazon and Apple and things like that. So 3 years ago, actually, someone reached out to me from Splunk, and actually I didn't even know anything about Splunk. And I started researching, and it's like, hey, yeah, it's like a security focused company. They do data analytics. Why are they reaching out to me? And it turns out, naturally, a lot of the customers, because of how powerful the underlying platform is, they started using it for OT use cases. And they said, look, we have this cohort. It's a growing cohort, but we need someone who has that background or knows the IoT space to really enable it to grow. And that began, quite a journey. And even like it's been through a lot of different transitions. And most recently, as you mentioned, Cisco acquired Splunk, which has been a real tailwind as well, because of course they're a hardware company versus Splunk was a software company. So now we have this total ecosystem of like hardware and software in the OT world.
That's interesting, yeah. And of course, Cisco also has this huge footprint in the industry. So I would say to make things a bit more tangible, to make them a bit more understandable for our audience, I'm gonna repeat the same question I've asked the previous podcast guests as well. So I'd like you to refer back to our industrial capability. Our industrial data platform capability map. I actually made that thing. I made the name way too complex even for myself to remember. No, let's talk about capabilities. I think it's really important because Splunk is entering this domain might indeed not be known by most of our listeners who come more from the OT domain. So if we talk about these 7 capabilities, when we talk about connectivity and the data platform, the broker, the analytics, etc., 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 could you like walk us through how data moves and just explain a bit like, okay, what does Splunk do at what level, and maybe where does it outperforms the competition? Maybe there are other domains where you think the offering is less suitable. I'd like to hear that from you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think traditionally, as I mentioned, Splunk is a data platform. And I'll put that on the back end. I'll come back to that. But I think data quality, data broker and store, the analytics of that, that's really like where Splunk's strength has been. But what I've been trying to grow at Splunk is actually the number one category of connectivity. and then of course analytics at the edge as part of that connectivity. So I'll start on that. So one of the challenges I heard from customers is like, how do I get industrial data into Splunk? There's existing infrastructure, but then you have to integrate a lot of these middleware, right? I think this is kind of what's happening in the industry. You have system integrators, you have do-it-yourself enthusiasts, and they're like, okay, I need to get that data in. So really, what I was thinking is, okay, how do we make that very easy? And we actually came out with 18 months ago an edge compute platform. So it's an edge box that actually has an AI chip. So I'm going to call it an AI box. It's not a GPU because it is IP rated, and thermal energy and efficiency was definitely something we wanted to focus with. So it has an NPU. But what it allows us to do is run more compute at the edge. Applications. We created our own application to run on this Edge Hub device, as it was called, to make it easy to connect to OPC UA, MQTT, all of these standard protocols, and alleviate that challenge to get data into Splunk. But then also, because we have this compute on the edge, this rugged device, we can run and partner with people like Litmus, who, hey, they offer all of these protocols, they support ARM, so they're actually becoming a growing partner of ours. And then once I actually started talking to the Litmus folks, I realized they already had a Splunk connector. So, seemingly their customers are saying, hey, we want to send the data into Splunk. So it's already there. We didn't even have to do any integration. It's built into Litmus already. So it kind of like reinforces that, like, yeah, we're strong on the analytics part. We need to grow in connectivity. And one of the ways to do that is definitely partner with leaders in the space. And then the other area, is on analytics. So there's platform analytics, but then there's also edge analytics. So because we have this device, we were saying, how can we move some of that analytics from the platform down to the edge? And then you might ask, why would I want to do it on the edge? There's a couple situations. One is, latency criticality. So, hey, it's like time-sensitive decisions, bandwidth constraints, or reliability. It's in a remote environment. You might not have good connectivity to a platform. So a couple of these areas really is pushing edge. And of course, edge AI is something. But yeah,
it's interesting, and actually, this wasn't a prepared statement, but in any case, the people of Litmus will also be joining this podcast series. So the ones that want to know more about Litmus, they should definitely subscribe, because they'll be also one of the next episodes. But just want to come back to the analytics part, because there is the possibility, or I'd say providing an engine or providing a device to run code. But there is also obviously the code development itself. What do you do? Do you offer a device which is able to run code, or do you also provide these either just in Python or low code, no code type of environments where you can also build those calculations or deploy those AI models?
Yeah, so this device, Edge Hub, is like kind of like a flagship to show you what you can do. You can use third-party equipment as well, but we're like, how do we make this, very streamlined to pair to the platform and kind of like just increase time to value, make it faster. And what we do on that device is we offer like, container ecosystem. So you can write Python code and, integrate it with other container apps, as I mentioned. But in our Splunk platform, for example, which can run in the cloud or on-premise. So we have a lot of air-gapped customers, government customers that have to run fully air-gapped. So our platform can be installed on any of the hyperscalers, your own cloud, or your own data center. And then in that platform, we have a tool called Machine Learning Toolkit. On top of this platform, you can have many apps. We have like 3,000 apps. So one of the apps is Machine Learning Toolkit, and we can actually look at all your data and create these predictive models. Or some of our customers have used it even for digital twins. And then from the time the data comes in through an edge device to get to the platform, you can create some inference in the cloud. Obviously, you can send that back down to a machine or send it to an operator, say, hey, adjust this parameter to make the machine run more efficiently. Wouldn't it be great to actually take that and push it to the edge? So we built in our platform the ability to, operationalize a model, click export, and then push it down to that container. And then, of course, you might want to add like multimodal inputs. And that's where, at least today, you push
Yeah.
it to the container and you can still like, okay, do a little bit more connectivity. But in the future, we want to make a lot more of that low code, no code as much as possible. And I think with generative AI, and I'll talk about that more later, that trend is actually fast kind of being accelerated.
Yeah, it definitely is. So this is really, I would say, on the map, the left part. I assume that
Yeah.
you have, I would say, you have quite a lot of knowledge on storing data at scale. When it comes to, I would say, our middle capability, the data broker, the contextualization, the store, etc., etc. But is security data and sensor data, is that something different, or is that the same, or are there at least similarities to be found, or how did you move from log data into sensor data?
Yeah, so I think, for people who have heard about Splunk, they know that Splunk is traditionally a big security focused company. We're actually number one in SIEM, security event information management. So that was a focus. And also the secondary focus is IT. So observability of applications. Like you said, hey, I want to know why this application went down. Let me search the log data. Oh, there's an error at this time on this day that coincides with a developer. So Splunk definitely is coming from the IT side. But something that's very interesting is that, 10 years ago, when Splunk was really starting to ramp up as like a company that's coming to public markets, IT was also quite fragmented, just like OT is today. So it's very interesting that Splunk had to face the same dilemma of, hey, like there is some standardization, of course, but there's always these custom flavors and different variants, and like how do we stitch this together? And out of that came kind of the Splunk processing language, which is really like we're going to search data on read. So just dump all your data in, and this kind of gets into like the 3 tiers: bronze, silver, gold. Dump all your raw data into Splunk. And then you can search it and then pull out patterns. So regex, which is regular expression, to say, hey, this data is coming in for, I don't know, temperature sensor. And there's a couple of sensors and they're slightly different, even though they're all MQTT. Well, we can use this intermediate layer of parsing, and then in the search dynamically cross-reference these two different, slightly different sources. It doesn't have to be in a predefined format. So that was how Splunk really started tying in all of these third-party vendors and disparate sources on the IT side. And especially in security, you can imagine like all these firewall logs, you're not going to ever be able to, clean all of that into like a silver tier. Some maybe, some is maybe more valuable. And then that's what we did. And then another learning we had is, as you hear from all the hyperscalers, is like, well, it's expensive now to have all your data in like search. Yeah. So then we also have what we call like dynamic data. So we have dynamic archive, which basically is like you can store data in a colder format and then we'll pull it into a hotter format for search to make sure it's the most efficient. You could do dynamic data self-storage. You decide on your own. Or you can do dynamic data active search, which is, it's just more in the hot storage camp. So there's a lot of innovation from the IT side that I think, as an OT guy, I would consider myself, we really can take advantage of to kind of leapfrog some of the challenges we're faced in the OT world. And that's kind of the beauty of where I see this IT OT convergence, coming.
Joel, just for me also to be clear, like, is Splunk positioning itself more like, let's say, an addition to the ecosystem, saying like we do have some capabilities, and by plugging in on the edge, we can enrich the existing base, let's say? Or are you guys positioning yourselves as, let's say, the OT data platform in general for all the needs?
Yeah, I think definitely, like I'm sure many have others have said, we're part of the ecosystem. We're not going to say, hey, we're going to do everything. There are other people who just by their focus areas, they've really, like, I mentioned Litmus. they're building in all these like protocols, and that's not something we're going to do. So we definitely are part of the ecosystem. And I think where we play a very strong role is on the analytics and search part. I'll give you kind of another example. We recently came out with something called federated search. So in the security side, for example, you may not want to store all your security data in Splunk or in one place. Amazon has a product called Amazon Security Lake. Well, now with federated search, you can actually take Splunk and search data that's stored in another place. And we've kind of developed that partnership. Yeah. So federation of basically searching data wherever it is kind of another tier of like analytics, and like how do you enable that? Because everyone's saying, hey, you have to bring it to our platform first. It's not going to scale, as data continues to scale.
Well, first of all, it's not going to scale. Secondly, it's going to be very, very, very costly to move and duplicate all that data. But secondly, nobody's ever going to win that race, right? There's always another person going to say like, oh yeah, but our platform is better. You need to bring all the data in our platform.
Exactly.
So I think the federated idea in security, that's one thing. In the sensor data world, I haven't heard that too often, but I do think it's actually a really, really good idea because most of the, I would say, concepts today, they still somehow have a central data platform where you bring or you pull or push all that data into the data platform, and then that becomes the single source of truth.
Right.
But yeah, still, even then, it's very, very difficult to build that single source of truth. And do you actually wanna? So that's an interesting one. Maybe to I would say somehow try to conclude the capability map discussion. The data sharing, data visualization are the features on the right side of the map. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, actually, that's probably another area we excel at. I wouldn't have thought so, but then I started looking at the visualization of kind of competitors in the industry, and it's like, okay, this is like Windows 90s era. It's really not modern. So again, because we're this modern software platform, we developed a product called Dashboard Studio, and it's similar to like, hey, you have an asset, you can link it to a search, so this asset is like dynamically refreshing on the screen. But it's coded in a way that even little things like dark mode, okay, it's like such a insignificant thing, but it's actually like something that's an easy thing for us to do because the platform is done in a way where it's using the latest state-of-the-art software, right? It's not like, oh, that's a 6-month project to actually bring that to you. It's like, okay, we can do that very quickly. And this actually also relates to where we're headed also with generative AI. So I mentioned we use this thing called Splunk processing language. It's different than SQL, similar, but different where it doesn't need structured data. We can do unstructured data. Now that everything is a search, and I don't know if you've seen in the biggest trend recently at the time of this recording is code generation for generative AI, right? So Cursor, it's like, hey, you can ask it to create some code. Now, because it's a coding platform, we can actually to generate dashboards. We can ask it to generate inferences and results, and not just like create the searches, but also show that to you in a really nice looking way. So it's going to really shrink the time to be like, hey, I have this executive presentation. I need to show all the quality defects on this line. You can actually start asking the system. And we're seeing a lot of growth. We currently have something called AI Assistant for SPL. So again, you don't need to learn how to do SPL writing as much. You just ask the agent and it will start doing the searches for you. So it's just like, the first step on this early innings we are in the generative AI landscape.
Okay, I think it makes it a bit more clear where Splunk is fitting, let's say, within the capability maps. You also brought a use case along to make it even more concrete. So maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, actually, the word you use, concrete, is exactly what I would go with. It's a concrete manufacturer. So, what they've been doing, it's actually, again, the security and IT groups, they kind of work with the OT groups and they say, hey, look, we have this really powerful platform And that's what's been able to scale us into the OT side a lot more in the recent years. And the OT engineers are like, okay, we have these raw minerals, aggregates for concrete, and we go and test in the quality lab. And you may not believe it, but concrete is actually one of the largest carbon emitting processes in the world, very energy intensive.
Yeah.
So for them, any energy savings is super valuable from both the sustainability point of view, but also even like tangible cost, bottom line revenue, because all the electricity they need to power these machines. So they put all this data into Splunk from their OT systems, and then they use that tool I mentioned earlier, machine learning toolkit, to create predictive models to say, hey, we have a quality lab testing the raw materials here. We have process data on the kiln for the temperature, the speed, the pressure. And then they were able to create predictive models that they're now able to go down to the PLC and say, hey, change this parameter. We actually don't need to run it as hot, and we can still come out with the level of quality we need. Because as you know, for critical infrastructure, you can't have concrete that fractures too easily. It's like bridges. This is a very serious thing. So being able to have confidence that you'll meet the quality standards, but also be able to optimize your process is super valuable for this company that I mentioned is Cementos Argos, and we talked with them last year about the innovations they've done. And they were doing this in the Splunk Cloud platform, and now that we came out with this edge compute device, they're able to push that model down to the edge. So what it actually allowed them to do typically in the past is they have 10 sites or something like that. They were saving $10 million a year with now this energy savings. And now that they can push it down to the edge, it can run 20% faster. So next year, 2 million. And then, again, you have parameters in the PLC to be like, hey, these edge cases, if something is really going off, obviously don't do it. But within these bounds, you can actually automate some of that action. I think someone was mentioning it's like a closed loop ecosystem where then operators can get kind of escalated to if there is kind of hey, this seems a little anomalous. Can you come check it out? Come work together. And now it's this kind of machine and the human working in partnership together. So that's very exciting for us. And it also opens new areas of the factory site. So before it was something called the kiln, which is this really hot process. And then there's another thing called the control tower, where latency is so critical that they couldn't go there in the past. But now that you have an edge device, you're able to actually go into these critical environments like self-driving and these other latency critical things. So yeah, it's a great reference customer for us. That's just metric data, but we also, as I mentioned, we're part of Cisco now. Mm-hmm. And we have customers saying, hey, we want to put in camera vision data or sound data. So we have looking at a blade and listening to the sound of a cutting of paper to determine when the blade is dull. Or vision, there's looking at license plates with Cisco Meraki. They have a whole camera suite. But then there's also how do we take that and fuse it with other data source? So we have a camera in a factory, and they're doing torque data, and they're combining it with the vision data. So you're now multimodal, they say, right? So like a human in a factory, you have multiple senses. You have your eyes, you have your hands, you can feel if that torque is off. And we're able to now bring that into kind of the machine. So it's super exciting, a lot of applications, and we're really just starting to grow, which is probably why a lot of people in the OT place haven't heard about us yet. But yeah, very much hoping to just make it easier, because I'm coming from the industrial side, and I wish I had a platform that just made it easy, to do these advanced things.
Is that multimodal part, is that already part of your offering? It's already integrated, or that's more something on the roadmap to work on?
It is something we have today. And I think probably the way to explain it is in the edge device, we have that container ecosystem. So a developer can put whatever they want. So today we actually have people using camera data and metrics data. They have that today. But we want to make that a low code, no code, right? So how do you do that? That's on the roadmap to make that very easy. But today you can actually, we have the data streams, we have the APIs, we have the way to kind of process it. So a data scientist, a data analyst can do it today. But a shop floor engineer, hopefully in less than a year, we can release some features. And generative AI is actually making us deliver faster. So we can actually bring these features to market faster. So
Joel, there is one question I really want to ask. I was going to ask it during the entire conversation, but I see all this cool stuff behind you. So it's I have this very blunt white background today, so nothing nothing fancy.
For the people listening on some on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go to the YouTube and you can see what's behind Joel.
Yeah.
It's much more interesting than our backgrounds for sure.
Yeah, this is really the moment to turn on your video. What is all the stuff you have behind you, Joel?
Yeah, so I think as a product manager, a good product manager, you have to really understand the industry.
Yeah.
So what I did is, this is like my office, and I'm like, okay, I need to understand the IT side, because I didn't even come from the IT side. So I have like full networking in my house, a 10 gig switch, like all of that type of stuff, PoE cameras, all that. It's all
Is
network.
that Cisco gear?
Yeah, I do have some Cisco gear. I started with some non-Cisco gear, and now I'm adapting Cisco gear, because for the personal it's too expensive, but for the enterprise,
Yes. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's still the case, but at least in my days, also quite power intensive.
yeah, exactly.
Electrical
And
heating,
then
David. Electrical heating.
and then I have some DIN rails here, so I'm starting to put like, some ruggedized switches and some other equipment. So hopefully the next time we chat, you'll see a lot more PLCs and stuff that are in the box that I need to start getting connected.
Okay.
And then, I can just run these experiments at home and really understand, like, when a user says, oh, this is difficult to use, I can do it myself and be like, okay, yeah, this is a pain point. How do we make this easier? So yeah, I don't want to ever be a person that's out of touch with the end user.
No, but I think that's really it's really cool. It also gave me a couple of ideas. Maybe one day I need to replace my world map, which typically sits behind me, with some of that fun stuff.
Well, we can send you a device, so you can start running some AI models at your home. You'd be surprised.
Most people also have their networking gear not in their office.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Right,
My wife
right.
doesn't like to look at all the cabling, and even if it's well done.
No, but actually my and I also have a managed switch at home, but it's sitting in the basement. So maybe I could do a picture or so behind me.
Yeah. And well, that's why I'm here in the basement with the gear. It's not for the family room.
Yeah, that's a better idea. We do our podcast recording studio in the basement. Anyways, we're now off track. We're now off track.
IT Crowd version 2.
Yeah, I saw this cool gear, and now we're totally totally off track. Hey, maybe to to get back on track, Joel. Just want to quickly go back to your cement use case.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the factors here is critical factors is collaboration. We talk about IT/OT collaboration quite a lot. In many companies, you still have this divide between people who are, I would say, responsible for the PLC side of things. People are responsible for the data platforms which are running in the cloud somewhere. To do this type of projects, you need a form of collaboration. Can you somehow, I would say, comment for this case or for other cases, like what have you seen regarding collaboration? What works, what doesn't? Who owns this platform, for example?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. So, as a self-declared OT guy, I remember this is a little bit of an anecdote. Hopefully, we have time. I was working at Toyota or Toyota Lexus, and we had a vehicle where there used to be a black primer that you put on the rear windshield, and then it became translucent. So everyone was asking, well, how do you know the quality is good? How do you know you're doing it? And we developed a partnership with the IT team to say, hey, we're actually going to implement a vision system, and there's going to be a motion sensor. PlayStation Move at the time was a thing. So it had a motion sensor on this applicator bottle, and actually track in 3D space, putting the primer on the window. And then we could say all the windows have this good seal, and the windows are not going to fall off while you drive, all this type of stuff. And that was like, my first patent, and that was like super exciting. And it kind of got me excited for this OT IT collaboration. And I found that really it's successful when you have these kind of innovation teams. And, especially now there's a lot more mandate to be like, let's get these people to work together, put their heads together. At the same time, empathizing with where I was many years ago, I want to also enable the citizen developer, the OT guy. So when when we were deciding on this edge device, we actually added like cellular backhaul as an option. We have Wi-Fi, Ethernet, etc. It's like, why, there are some remote applications you want cellular, but also I just wanted the OT person to be able to like, okay, I'm just going to set this up, get my feet wet, and then when I know it's really good, I'm going to bring it to the IT person. And that's a lot of times what happens. So I'm really thinking about that person who kind of wants to get started and make our platform really accessible to them. But at the same time, when it kind of comes to production and scale, you're going to have to, you're going to have to cross that bridge. Like, especially
Yeah.
IT is owning security, right? And
Yeah.
OT security is huge, and Splunk is a security company. So I think one of the selling points is like, you can feel confident that when you do your OT experiments in our ecosystem, you're not going to run into security issues down the line because we have all the security options. We're going to check all those boxes. So, really for us, it's like, how do we excel in OT? And then we can really be at least one platform that helps, make this divide less far apart.
I didn't consider that argument actually, because it's an argument we obviously face quite a lot, like the security argument. But you guys just go like, yeah, but we're your security platform anyways.
Yeah, exactly. We've thought of all of these cases, how to get the security data, and like, all of these OT security applications like Stuxnet and all that. That's like our main business area. So, you shouldn't be worried about getting into security block with Splunk.
I can also imagine then that your entry points are usually going to be through IT. Like you have like an IT or you're in an IT organization. How then do you make the step to production? Because I mean, there's not that many applications that are really used in IT, certainly not in security, that make the bridge to the shop floor. So
yeah,
how do you make
totally.
that link, and how do you gain that trust? Because also in the OT world, Splunk is not as known as in security, to say the least.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things. One, actually, we didn't mention as much as Cisco. They have a huge footprint. So actually, now what we're doing is, hey, you have a Cisco switch there. It has some limited compute, not as much as the AI box, but we can actually run some applications on your switches. So actually, getting into the environment that you're already connecting your PLCs and everything to, we can leverage that Cisco portfolio and make it really easy to get data into Splunk. Definitely coming in from the IT side again in that particular use case. But also on the OT side, we actually have, system integrators that we're really working with to go in. And they're people who know OT. They have OT guys who are doing vibration analytics for robots and predicting downtime and maintenance. They're either like, GSIs, global, the large ones, Accenture, Deloitte, EY, etc., or they're like niche ones who are like, hey, I'm focused in oil and gas, or I'm focused in, these different verticals. So we're really working with that group to at least start breaking in more into the OT side. And then, I'm hoping it turns into a little bit of a snowball as people start seeing like, wow, yeah, this is a really good platform. And one of the interesting things is the next generation of students, I would say, they're more IT savvy, So when they go and look at these old systems, they're like, what is this? I can't even use this. It's archaic. And then they come to a modern software system like ours. They're like, yeah. So, we're hoping that a bit of all of these methods will really kind of, again, close that gap between these two industries that have been wanting to work better together, and hopefully we can make a way.
I think that's a great way to end this episode, Joel. The skills gap, the wanting to work together, etc. So yeah, I would say that's a wrap for this one, where we again explored how to make industrial data work for us. A big thank you to you, Joel Jacob, for sharing your insights, and to you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe at itotinsider.com and leave a rating, because it really, really helps us. And see you next time for more insights on bridging IT and OT. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.